Hi, my name is Katie. Let's talk about all 14 books that I read in September. I'm actually really excited to do this video because my reading habits have changed a little bit in September and I want to talk to you guys about it. So I just want to show you one graph because I have been reading a lot more big books this month. For the first time ever, I think, I read 3 books over 500 pages in 1 month, and my next highest, the majority of what I read this month, was 300 to 499 pages. Actually, quite a few of those books were high in page count. So I'm really happy with the way that my reading is trending. I think that is very typical for me. I like to read longer books in the colder months, and I like to read shorter, fast-paced things in the warmer months. So I'm really excited to be transitioning into fall and also hopefully be reading more longer books in October as well. So let's talk about the 5,228 pages that I read this month. The first thing I read was Yerba Buena, and I really wanted to finish this while it was still warm outside. I wanted to get to this year because I was so excited to pick it up when it came out, because Watch Over Me by Nina LaCour is one of my favorite books of all time, and I was so excited to see that she had come out with an adult book. And it just didn't work for me, and I'm really bummed about it. I tried to pick this up a few times this summer and it just wasn't working for me, so I put it down. I ended up listening mostly to this on audiobook, and there were multiple times where I know if I was reading it physically I would have DNF'd. It just wasn't as captivating as I wanted it to be. I did love the conversations that we were having in this. I think I just wish it was a little bit more edited. I did love the fact that this is about 2 women who end up being in a relationship together, but we actually follow them more outside of the relationship than we do in the relationship. We see their childhoods and how they grow up before they ever meet each other. I also love the conversations about work. We have one character who is a florist, and she's really good at figuring out how to put things together that other people might not put together, but when she does it, it's this really beautiful, curated thing, and she applies that skill to a different career path in the future. And I just really enjoyed seeing her have this talent and this passion and then figuring out what career path that worked best in for her. I don't think I will be continuing to pick up anything that Nina LaCour publishes. I think I will just stick to if she publishes something with a speculative element, because I really loved how the ghosties worked in Watch Over Me, and this was pure contemporary. There's no speculative element to this, so I think that's my plan moving forward with this author. The next thing I read was Empire of Pain, The Secret History of the Sackler Dynasty. This is about the opioid crisis and the Sackler family's role in that. It was very interesting. The reporting that it took to make this book was absolutely incredible. Definitely a feat of journalism for sure. I did watch the Hulu show Dopesick, which is talking about the same crisis but from more of a narrative structure. So that was really interesting to have watched that before reading this book, because this book can read a little bit like a textbook sometimes. I believe this won the Goodreads Choice Award for nonfiction last year. So I did definitely want to pick it up, and I am curious about the opioid crisis and learning more about that. And I think this book was really well done. It is so comprehensive about the Sackler family that it helps to fill in some of the gaps that the TV show didn't go quite as in depth with each of the members of the family. And it's quite a big family, so it did get a little confusing watching the show at some points. But then the other narrative story pieces of the TV series and getting to watch like the commercials that they're talking about, where there might have been some fraudulence going on, and getting to hear from the people after they had participated in these commercials and were actually addicted to opioids. There's a whole thing. I did really love having both of these pieces of the puzzle to put together to fully understand what this crisis is all about. Then I read I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Everybody read this last month, so I'm a little bit behind, but I wasn't able to find a physical copy of it anywhere. It's all sold out, which is awesome for Jeanette. I'm so glad that this book has had such a positive response and everyone is buying it and reading it. I think that's amazing. I wasn't able to get a copy anywhere, so I ended up getting the audiobook from Scribd. It was released on like August 29th or something, so I snatched it up and started reading it as soon as it came out, but I finished it in this month. I just think this book is incredible. It is one of my favorite memoirs I have ever read. As a fan of iCarly, it was one of my favorite shows growing up. Being able to see the behind the scenes, I really loved the tone of this book because Jeanette is taking us through her entire life. And obviously she's writing it looking back, having unpacked the way that she was thinking as a child. But when she writes it as she was thinking and behaving when she was a child. And so we see the abuse that she experienced, but from her frame of mind when she was experiencing it. She really loved her mother, thought she could do no wrong. I've just never seen that done before. Instead of coming out and saying, obviously this is wrong and awful what this person did to me, talking about how they were thinking in that moment. It was really interesting to see Jeanette go through this process and have these thoughts that she later unpacked in therapy and then realized that her childhood was not so great, and kind of unpacking that later in life. I just really enjoyed the way that this was written. I think she did a fantastic job. The audiobook is incredible. Jeanette narrates it herself. And I would highly, highly recommend that experience. If you haven't picked up this book yet, it is definitely worth the hype, and I think you definitely should. Then I read some middle grade, which is not something that I usually say on this channel, but I want to read everything T. Kim Fisher's ever written, so I did read A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kim Fisher. There are some people who are magical, they're wizards. Some of them have these really powerful things that they can do with their magic. They're able to control air, or they're able to control lightning. Things that are like powerful and useful. And the military kind of snatches those people up. And then you have people who are kind of like lesser magicians. Our main character is one of them, and she is a baker. So she can manipulate dough with her magic. And so she makes little gingerbread men stand up and dance and walk around. And it's just such a cute book. I really, really loved it. And the conversations that we were having were amazing. And it's still got that sinister undertone that T. Kim Fisher books typically have. There's a magician in here who can manipulate dead horses. And so that's like her whole power. So she rides through town on like a dead horse, and it's just very absurd in that T. Kim Fisher way, and I really, really enjoyed it. Okay, then I read a bunch of dark academia. So the first one I read was Vita Nostra. I love this book. Highly recommend. Hated the ending, but loved everything else. I feel like I have pitched this book so many times recently on my channel, so I'm gonna see if I can give you a different angle to this. This book deals a lot with fear and coercion. So our characters are at this school, but they don't know what they're supposed to be studying, and they've basically been manipulated and coerced into being at this school, because if they don't do what their advisors say, then horrible things happen to their family, and it gets really speculative and very crazy, and I just really, really loved it. Didn't love the ending, but I recently learned that there's a second book, and I will definitely be picking that up. Then I read Babel by R.F. Kuang. Again, I've pitched this so many times on my channel recently, so I will just tell you the magic system in here is my favorite magic system I have ever seen. We're having lots of conversations about colonialism and empire. R.F. Kuang's books do this thing to my brain where they just feel like I am learning and growing as a person as I read them, and they're also so good. Like, I have to stop reading multiple times while I'm reading these books to think about how good the writing is. They are incredible. If you haven't picked this up yet, I highly recommend you do so. Then I read The Atlas 6. If you want to hear my in-depth thoughts on any of these dark academia books, I will link the dark academia video up here, and I'll put a link in the description. And you can hear me rant about them for an hour, because I loved some of them and I hated some of them. And unfortunately, this was one of the ones that did not work for me. This is Book Talk's baby, and I knew in my soul that it probably wasn't gonna be for me, and I wish that I had listened to that. But then I've seen a lot of people recently picking this up thinking it's gonna be overhyped and actually really enjoying it. But unfortunately, I was not one of those people. I did not enjoy this. I love the pitch. Secrets, betrayal, seduction, power. Welcome to the Alexandrian Society. I love a Library of Alexandria moment, but I think the best way that I can show you the vibes of this is by showing you two pictures that are in here. The illustrations are a very accurate description of what the vibe of the book is like. Last time I showed you one of them, and I know that helped some of you, so here is one of our characters. Here is another character. If that's your vibe and you like that vibe, I think this is for you. It's a bunch of 20-somethings. They're trying to protect the Library of Alexandria. They're studying. It's a good premise. I just didn't love the way that the characters interacted with each other and the way that they were built up. They're three-dimensional people. They're just really annoying to me, and I couldn't get on board with any of them. And that was unfortunate because I wanted to have someone to root for, because then the whole thing is that 6 of them enter, one of them doesn't survive, and I wanted people to root for, and I didn't feel like I wanted to root for any of them. Wish I would have seen those pictures before I read it, and that's what I'll say. Okay. Then I read The Secret History, and I also didn't love this, and I know people are gonna tell me that I read it incorrectly and that I didn't get it. And to that I say, no. I didn't like it, and it wasn't for me. I'm not saying it's a bad book. I understand what Donna Tartt was trying to do. The characters are supposed to be bad people. You're not supposed to like them. They're supposed to be racist and misogynistic and homophobic, and they're supposed to be evil and bad people. Fine. I read a lot of books where the main character is bad and the people are doing bad things, and I like reading those books, but I did not like this. All of the pieces in here that I like in theory, I have read other places better. Like if I wanted to read a group of people losing their minds because they've murdered someone, I think that's done better in Crime and Punishment. If I want to read about a group of people studying, I think it's done better in Vita Nostra or Catherine House. And even in the Atlas 6, I enjoyed the studying parts of this more than I enjoyed the parts in here. If you're reading this year, I really hope it works for you. It just didn't work for me. The last Dark Academia book I have to talk about is Bunny, and I loved this. We have a clique, cult, if you will, of saccharine girls. Again, I feel like I've pitched this so much, but this book really feels like a fever dream / mental breakdown, and it is so good. If you are wondering whether or not you should read this, I will read you the first paragraph. We call them bunnies because that is what they call each other. Seriously, Bunny. Example, hi Bunny, hi Bunny. What did you do last night, Bunny? I hung out with you, Bunny. Remember, Bunny? That's right, Bunny. You hung out with me and it was the best time I ever had. Bunny, I love you. I love you, Bunny. If you want those vibes, it's for you. It's definitely for me, and I hope it's also for you. It's a group of women in this graduate writing program, so you get the writing program vibes as well, the Dark Academia piece, and you also get this absolutely insane group of women who are so suffocatingly feminine, and I just loved it. Then I read Nettle and Bone, and I have to show you how beautiful this book is, because under this dust jacket is a little bone dog, and I think it's the cutest thing I've ever seen. Again, T. Kingfisher has created some incredible end papers. I just really, really enjoyed this book. I think it is perfect for this season. If you're looking for something spooky but not horror, I think this is a good one to pick up. Basically, our main character is trying to save her sister from this prince who is evil. She enlists the help of a dust wife, who is a person who looks after graveyards, and they're a little bit magic. She needs to sew a cloak of nettles, build a dog out of bone, and capture moonlight in a jar. We kind of follow her on this quest as she tries to do these impossible tasks and then save her sister. It is a really good time, and it's nice and short, so would highly recommend if you're looking for something that is fast-paced, a little bit funny, that T. Kingfisher vibes. I highly recommend this. Then I read Magic Lies and Deadly Pies. I really wanted to love this. I tried so hard to love this book, and I just did not. I love the premise. We have a woman, she's bisexual. She's making murder pies for men who have assaulted women. And it's low stakes because if the pie gets delivered to the wrong person, it won't kill them. Like, she can eat the pie. And she also bakes a lot of pies for other things. Like for the students at the college, she bakes, calming and study extra hard pies and whatever. And she's also entering into this baking competition, and there's also someone who's like, I know who you are, trying to threaten her, and she has a dog, and the dog is adorable, and she meets this guy who has an orchard. On paper, it's the perfect book for me, and so I was really pissed when I didn't love it. The execution of it was not my favorite thing. I didn't love some of the conversations we were having. So unfortunately, the writing didn't quite work for me. I do still love the premise, so I'm not mad that I picked it up. I'm just a little sad that it didn't quite work for me. I've also been reading a lot of thrillers, and specifically thrillers on audiobook this month. So I read Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. Basically, I just reserved every book by Riley Sager at my library in anticipation for wanting to read a lot of them during the Halloween season, and this was the first one that was available, so I picked it up and just tore right through it. I love Riley Sager's writing. I think he knows how to write a book that hooks you in. Our main character needs some money. She's trying to apply for jobs. She finds this apartment sitting job at this very kind of infamous building in New York City. The residents are very secretive. It's got huge gargoyles on it. It's very gothic, and she's gonna get paid 12 grand to apartment sit, just live in this apartment for 3 months. And she's like, yep, sign me up. I want $1,000 a week for sure. And so she gets here. It has all these rules. She can't have anyone stay with her. She can't spend a night out of the apartment. It's got a lot of rules to it. She starts to meet all the other residents and get to know them. One of them is the author of her favorite book. There's a lot going on in this story, and I just loved the whole thing. It had the right amount of spookiness all the way through. I was always intrigued. I always wanted to read the book. I would say this is the book out of everything that I read this month that I kept wanting to pick up the most because it was just so engaging. So I would highly recommend if you're looking for something a little scary, a little thriller moment for your Halloween season. This is a good pick. Then I read The Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey. I saw Kayla from Books and Lala recommending this as an audiobook, so I reserved it for my library, and I absolutely loved the audiobook. I didn't know anything about the book when I was going into it. I just was looking for another audiobook to pick up, heard that this one was good on audiobook, reserved it, and started listening, and I was really pleasantly surprised with the plot, because it's talking about clones, and our main character is a researcher. She's very scientific, and I love science medical stories, so this one was actually perfect. I thought it was great. I thought it was suspenseful all the way through. I really loved the conversations about clone versus human and what rights you have as a clone. I just thought it was incredible. I really enjoyed it. Then I read Eat a Peach by David Chang, and I really loved it. I have consumed every TV show thing that David Chang has done before, and it was really interesting to read his memoir because he is so real and raw with who he is and what he was feeling and his kind of self-awareness about his own flaws and what he's working on in himself. And I just really enjoyed it because there are some things that don't come across when you see him on a TV show like Ugly Delicious, or when he's interacting with people. You kind of get what his personality is, but you don't see what's going on behind the scenes, and I really enjoyed it. So if you know David Chang and you follow any of his chef stuff, I think this was a good one to pick up if you're interested in figuring out the man behind the food, if you will. And then I actually forgot a book, so I read 15 books this month, and that's the last one I read was Elatsoe. I really loved this. This is about a girl who can raise the ghosts of dead animals, and so she has a ghost dog companion, and it was just the cutest thing. Her dog's name is Kirby. We had a cat growing up named Kirby. There are a lot of really cool conversations in here. I would say it read more middle grade than young adult to me. I had a really great time. I loved every single page of this. I love an animal companion. I love the fact that she is talking about ghosts in the underworld, and she's also fighting vampires, and there's a lot of really cool conversation about Native American land and vampires in here because vampires have to be invited in, and so there's a point in here where she is able to push the vampires out because she is indigenous and they're on her land that was stolen from her. It's not public land, it's indigenous land that was stolen. So she's able to like push the vampires out and be like, you're not welcome here. leave. And it's so cool. I really loved that part of this, especially. I've had this book for a long time and I've been waiting for fall to read it, so I was really excited to be able to pick it up in September. And that is everything that I read in September. I would love to hear what you guys have been reading recently, any new favorites, anything that you were hoping to love but didn't love, because I had quite a few of those this month. I'm very excited for my reading month in October, so if you want to stick around and see what I'm going to be reading next month, please make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss out on any of those videos. I post every Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern, so I will see you next week. I'm very excited because in just 2 weeks, I will have a brand new puppy who I'm sure will be disrupting my reading and filming quite a bit. So stay tuned for that. I will see you next week. Bye.